The story begins with Haruto Amakawa, a stinky orphan nerd leaving his childhood home in the suburbs for the city. His crush Maru pleaded for him to stay, but Haruto dismissed her, promising that he would someday return to save her and that they would get married. Years later, Haruto, now a university student, rode a bus where a girl stared at him. Suddenly, the bus went out of control and a mysterious figure, Mr. Train, transported them all to another world. Haruto's memories of Maharu flashed as they arrived. In this new world, a smelly boy named Ryo woke up, confused and covered in sweat. He had flashbacks of someone else's memories and forgot his name, adopting Haruto Amakawa. Unsure of who Haruto was, Ryo remembered a grandfather who had taught him martial arts, but it was all blurry. Three men burst in, surprised that Ryo had survived a fever and were about to bury him. One of the men placed a brown sack in the corner. As Ryo sat with the men eating, they complained about his smell, saying he was ruining the food and asked him to find the Axe body spray they had dropped outside. When Ryo headed out to search, he picked fruit since no one would give him food. He had more flashbacks of Haruto, realizing Haruto was a university student from Japan on a bus when he blacked out and was hit by a train. Confused by modern Japan and its civilization, Ryo was unsure of who he was, but ultimately remembered he was just Ryo, a lonely boy from the slums with a thirst for revenge for his mother's death. In another flashback, Ryo recalled his mother promising to take him to her homeland before an assassin killed her. Since then, revenge had been his sole ambition. A group of noble girls approached, asking if he had seen a bubbly purple-haired girl who had gone missing. Ryo denied it, but they commented on his smell and kept their distance. One, Vanessa, was rude, so Ryo responded sharply. Celia, a silver-haired girl, apologized to Vanessa and asked more politely if he had heard anything about the missing girl. Ryo answered that he hadn't. Celia asked Ryo where the slums were, and he warned her and her friends not to go because of their fine clothes. The girls considered changing clothes before entering the slums, but decided to do one last check. Celia used a magic detecting spell, and while they didn't find their friend, they detected magical activity around Ryo. Vanessa questioned Celia, who revealed that Ryo seemed to have a powerful magical spirit Chronical. Ryo was the only one who could see the blue flames surrounding him. The girls realized their purple-haired friend must have been in the slums, thanked Ryo, and left him behind like an orphan. Celia gave him a bag of silver coins before they left. Ryo hurried home, but an assassin attempted to stab him. The blade hit the bag of coins, saving his life. As Ryo cowered, a pink-haired beauty appeared in spirit form, calling him Haruto. She explained that he was a god-tier magician and started teaching him the basics of magical combat. With this newfound knowledge, Ryo recalled his training from his past life and used it to fight the assassin. The assassin, using powerful magic, tried to finish off Ryo, but Ryo landed an insanely powerful kick, knocking the knife away. As the assassin quivered in fear and insulted Ryo, he attempted a final strike, but Ryo used a devastating technique to eliminate him. Shocked by his strength, Ryo found the assassin unconscious, having taken out the other men in the room. Hearing movement from the brown sack, Ryo discovered Princess Flora, the purple-haired girl the noble girls had been searching for. She explained that she had been captured for ransom and asked Ryo to help her return to the castle. In exchange, her father would reward him and knight him. Ryo agreed, though he didn't fully understand. As they headed outside, the noble girls spotted them and accused Ryo of kidnapping the princess. They blamed him for betraying them and arrested him despite giving him silver coins. He tried to explain, but they refused to listen, taking him to the castle to answer for his crimes. There, Ryo met a sinister figure named Charles. Charles, the Lord Commander and first sword to the king, took pleasure in humiliating Ryo, a poor boy from the slums. He beat Ryo senselessly with a wooden stick, ignoring Ryo's pleas at innocence. Meanwhile, Princess Flora wakes up and tells the maids and Celia that Ryo is not at fault and should be sent to her room, as he is the one who has freed her. Celia then went to the dungeons and was horrified to find Ryo barely alive. She warned Charles that she had given orders to hold him, not to harm him. Charles claimed he followed orders, but eventually agreed to let Ryo down. After apologizing, Celia used a healing spell to restore him. Once Ryo woke up in the Beltrum Kingdom, Celia explained that he would be summoned to the king for an audience. The king wanted to thank him, leaving Ryo stunned personally. Not knowing how to address the king properly, Celia helped him prepare. After some royal training, Ryo entered the throne room with a slick new haircut and earned admission to the Beltrum Royal Academy of Magic. Celia warned Ryo that most students at the academy came from privileged backgrounds and would likely bully him. Ryo, however, wasn't bothered knowing his place. When he entered his new class, the students immediately murmured about him being a disgusting slum kid. Still, because he had saved Princess Flora, the king had personally ensured his admission. The cold reception and his illiteracy made things harder, but Celia promised him private tutoring. In her faculty room filled with complicated texts, Celia, a brilliant 12-year-old professor, was impressed by Ryo's grasp of arithmetic, aided by Haruto's college education. Over tea, she asked how his first day had gone, and he admitted that it had been tough but not terrible despite the discrimination. The next day, during a martial arts class, Ryo's peers ridiculed his stance, but the instructor saw his potential and invited him to a duel. Ryo used his kendo training, earning the instructor's respect and offering to join the Royal Knights, but he declined to focus on other priorities. Later, Celia found Ryo studying for the end-of-term exams. While she advised him not to worry too much, Ryo chose to study harder. During the exam, he breezed through the questions while his peers struggled. Afterward, As memories of Haruto flooded back, Ryo remembered his childhood sweetheart Miharu and how they had drifted apart. The results were posted a few days after the exams, and Ryo tied for first place with Christina, while Rona took third. A nobleman instigating discrimination against Ryo accused him of cheating. However, Christina and Rona accepted the results, and Celia vouched for Ryo's hard work. The group refused to listen and stormed off. Celia congratulated Ryo but expressed concern that the other students might use this against him. Ryo wasn't bothered as long as he had Celia's support. 5 years later, a select few students, including Ryo, were chosen for an exhibition tournament. He protested Ryo's inclusion, but the instructor insisted the decision was final. Celia congratulated Ryo, mentioning that he might be recruited into the Knights if a scout was impressed, but Ryo insisted he had no intention of joining. Celia then asked Ryo what he planned to do after graduation, and he said he planned to go on a journey. She invited him to stay and work at her laboratory, having significantly benefited from his tea brewing skills. Ryo mentioned that she would soon enter marriage talks and that it would be inappropriate for a commoner like him to work there. When Celia asked where Ryo planned to go, he said he wanted to visit Yagumo, his mother's homeland. He briefly entered a trance, remembering his mother, which worried Celia. Weeks later, the Royal Exhibition Tournament began, presided over by Alfred. Ryo's first opponent was Charles, who had once thrashed him. Charles was surprised to see Ryo as his opponent, and Ryo quipped that he owed Charles a debt for treating him so well. As the match started, Charles was furious, driven by years of resentment after being demoted for mistreating Ryo. At first, the match seemed evenly matched, but when Charles charged forward recklessly, Ryo seized the opportunity and disarmed him, winning. Alfred declared Ryo the winner and would defend his title against The Undertaker the following week. Charles begrudgingly accepted his defeat while Ryo's peers applauded him. Later, Charles drank away his frustration with an ambassador from the Proxia Empire, who lifted his spirits, though he admitted Ryo's movements had been impressive. Charles revealed that Ryo had been suspected of Flora's kidnapping 5 years ago, which caught his attention. The next day, Celia waited to celebrate Ryo's victory, but she spotted him behind the school where a girl confessed her feelings to him. Celia was visibly upset, and as she tried to move past it, she realized that Ryo's graduation plans were still uncertain. Celia held a lecture on lightning magic control, and Alphonse taunted that only Ryo would benefit since he couldn't use magic. Celia asked Alphonse and Stuart to demonstrate their lightning spells, which they did. She then showed them what real lightning control looked like by casting multiple lightning spells that danced around the room and exploded into light. Though Ryo couldn't use magic formulas as they could, he could recreate spells he saw using his vast mana. After class, Stuart praised Celia, but berated Ryo for attracting too much attention from the girls. He tried to intimidate Ryo, but Celia vouched for him and told Stuart to drop it. Later, the class went on their practicum exam with Alphonse as the unit commander. They had to traverse the forest to reach the goal before sundown. Thanks to his father's connections, Alphonse had prepared a secret route to guarantee success. Rona felt uncomfortable with the cheating, but Christina allowed it. Stuart assigned Ryo as the baggage carrier, and Flora offered to help, but Ryo refused. As they journeyed through the forest, they encountered a troop of goblins. Despite his arrogance, Alphonse showed strong command skills and ordered the vanguard units to enhance their strength, quickly taking down the goblins. Alphonse then noticed Ryo spacing out and called for his attention. Hidden behind the trees, he was impressed by Ryo's awareness and decided to test his skills. Meanwhile, Alphonse and the group, following his father's map, ended up at a dead end, a cliffside blocking their path. With no time to backtrack, Christina asked Alphonse what they should do. Before he could answer, they were ambushed by 3 orcs. Alphonse tried to defend, but Stuart was injured and panicked, accidentally knocking Flora off the cliff. Without hesitation, Ryo jumped to save her, but ended up falling himself. Alphonse eventually organized a defense, and they defeated the orcs. Ryo, however, was unharmed. Afterward, Alphonse questioned what had happened. Stuart denied bumping into Flora and accused Ryo of pushing her. Seeing the escalating tension, Ryo leaves the school and starts his journey early, but Flora refuses to abandon him. A terrifying roar shook the ground and a massive minotaur descended from the skies. Christina's thunderball failed, and Alphonse ordered the group to use Ice Lance, taking charge of the battle. However, his vanguard failed against the minotaur's power, forcing him to order a retreat. Christina and Rona left, thinking Flora had evacuated, but she stayed behind to treat an injured vanguard student. The minotaur found her, but Ryo appeared just in time, cutting off its hand and ordering her to retreat. He then battled the massive creature and defeated it by cutting off its head. The students returned for Flora, and Ryo used the chance to slip away. RIZZ, observing Ryo, recognized him as a descendant of Yagumo due to his black hair and eyes. Later, Celia overheard the headmaster and Duke Gustav discussing Ryo's disappearance. The headmaster was forced to blame Ryo to protect the nobility. Celia anxiously waited, but Ryo showed up instead. They shared a brief reunion where Ryo thanked Celia for her support and promised to write under the alias Haruto. After their farewell, Ryo left for Yagumo. Meanwhile, Duke Gustav gave Ryo's cloak to a beastkin assassin named Latifa, ordering her to track him down and eliminate him. Ryo flew out the gate and reached Amand, a market town in Galark, in 3 days. Luckily, his wanted posters hadn't arrived, allowing him to gather supplies freely. Although he sensed someone following him, he dismissed it as paranoia. While exploring, a street vendor caught his attention, selling a pasta bass dish introduced by the local ruler, Lisa Lotti. After eating, the vendor directed him to to the merchant guild where a food stall awaited. Rio met Lottie, a receptionist who helped him pick preserved foods for his journey. Lottie was intrigued by his knowledge of tea. Before leaving, Rio wrote to Celia, telling her he would no longer be able to write once he left the region. With a heavy pack, he departed as Lottie saw him off. Another receptionist addressed Lottie as Lissa Lottie, reminding her of her alias. While trekking through a forest, Rio encountered an injured person on the road. He approached to help but was attacked with poison needles. That was the last time he acted selflessly. Latifah drew a dagger, but both were shocked by each other's speed. When Latifah cast a physical enhancement spell, Rio matched for power. Noticing that Latifah was focused on her knives, Rio sheathed his sword and used his fists, knocking her out of the air and pinning her down. Latifah reacted wildly, prompting Rio to calm her with a weak sleep spell. He recognized the collar around her neck as a slave collar and dispelled it. The girl who had died with Rio in the traffic accident, had everyone been reincarnated? She was also a slave to Stuart, who forced her to call him older brother with the collar, subjecting her to pain for disobedience. When she woke, Latifah feared Rio, but seeing the collar was gone, she cried with relief. Rio learned she was connected to Stuart and confirmed there were no other pursuers. After ensuring she no longer posed a threat, Rio freed her, but knew beastkin like her were often enslaved in the region. He told her to head east to the wilderness, where other demihumans lived, coincidentally where he was headed. Rio tried to leave her behind, but Latifah followed him. He clarified that he hadn't freed her out of kindness. Finishing Latifah would only complicate things. Despite her forced attack, Rio didn't resist her enough to travel with him. Tearfully, she offered him her slave collar, wanting to be obedient. Though she hated being a slave, she feared being alone. Rio reluctantly allowed her to join him, but asked her to discard the collar. As they journeyed east, Latifah cried over her first real meal in ages. Seeing her exhaustion, Rio camped early. Meanwhile, Celia received Rio's letter, relieved he was alive but saddened that he wouldn't write again. Later, Rio was surprised when Latifah knew about spaghetti, leading him to suspect she too was reincarnated. His suspicion was confirmed when he overheard her nightmare, crying to return to Tokyo. The following day, Latifah noticed Rio resembled the boy she had seen on the bus. She asked if she could call him older brother, and he agreed. Their journey continued through harsh landscapes, and Rio spotted a tree no one else could see, suggesting it was magically hidden. While camping, Rio eased Latifah's nightmares. When the campfire died, a glowing white wolf blinded him, and he was surrounded by 4 demi-human girls: Yuzuma, a harpy; Sarah, a wolfman; Alma, a dwarf; and Orphea, a high elf. Though initially distressful, Sarah convinced the others to listen. When they found Latifah asleep from a spell, Yuzuma attacked, thinking Rio had kidnapped her. Alma bound him, and Yuzuma tasted him unconscious. In a dream, the woman who had taught Rio's spirit magic wished him sweet dreams. When Rio woke, he was shackled. Latifah angrily demanded answers. Ursula, a village leader, apologized, and the girls knelt, offering their apologies. Ursula promised punishment and formal apologies the next day, then freed Rio. The following day, Ursula led Rio to the Hall of Elders. He noticed the world tree in the distance. Ursula explained that it was where the spirit Dryas resided and was visible only to those with strong spiritual senses, which intrigued her about Rio. Rio met the village elders, Sildra, an elf, and Dominic, a dwarf, who apologized for the mistreatment and thanked him for freeing Latifah. They offered to grant him a wish, but Rio only asked that they take Latifah. Since she had become attached to him, he requested to stay in the village for a while. The elders agreed, and Dominic jokingly invited him to marry a village girl. Rio then asked to be taught spiritual arts and other valuable techniques. Suddenly, the village's guardian deity, Diaz, inspected Rio. She discovered a dormant human-shaped spirit within him which prevented humans from casting magic. She revealed that human-shaped spirits were mainly wiped out in a divine war 1,000 years ago, making Rio's spirit unique and valuable. The revelation changed how the elders treated Rio, granting him VIP status in the village. Orphea led Rio to his new home where Latifah and the others were waiting. To Rio's surprise, the village had rice from the Yabumo region. He was also told that Orphea and the girls would live with him so that Latifah could form bonds with others. Rio agreed. As weeks passed, Rio studied spiritual arts and enjoyed village life. A grand spirit festival was held in honor of the world tree, and Rio participated. Meanwhile, RIZZ embarked on an adventure to retrieve a mysterious egg from a cave, which would strengthen his celestial lion brigade. A year had passed since Rio and Latifah had settled in the village. To formalize their stay, they each received a kiss from Lady Dryas. As the ceremony ended, Dominic announced the feast. Dwarves were either blacksmiths, drunks, or both. During the celebration, Orphea and the others expressed their frustration that Rio was always guarded, even though he was close to Latifah. They also wanted to be close friends, and Rio welcomed their friendship. They left for more drinks, and Rio spoke to Ursula about leaving the village. Meanwhile, RIZZ left his companion behind, taking a red pill before flying into the sky. He spotted black wyverns in the distance. Later, Rio and Latifah took a late-night stroll. Rio asked if she liked living there, and she said she did, mainly because he was there. Rio told her he planned to leave for Yagumo, and though Latifah insisted on joining him, he refused, warning her of the dangers ahead. Angered, she ran off. The village elders met to discuss the black wyverns spotted in the area, while RIZZ infiltrated the wyverns' den and stole their eggs. Sarah and the other girls flew to survey the area and spotted a young adventurer near a watering hole. They approached and interrogated him, with Sarah warning him not to instigate a fight. They grew concerned when they saw he had an egg in a sling. The adventurer flew on his griffin and Sarah ordered his capture. Yuzuma's thunderbolts missed, but the griffin couldn't escape the black wyvern. Sarah realized the egg was a wyvern's and chased it, sending word to the elders. Meanwhile, RIZZ finished stealing the eggs, crushed a red gem, and died, causing the body and egg to fall. Sarah asked Alma to keep chasing, and Latifa discovered the dead body and shattered egg. The black wyvern landed, roaring in grief over its child. Ryo returned to the village where Dominic announced that the festival was cancelled due to the wyverns. Hearing Latifa, Rio sprinted into the forest. Alma saved Latifa from the wyvern, summoning her spirit animal to help, but Alma's attacks were ineffective. The battle became one of endurance until the village evacuated. The wyvern trapped Latifa and was about to be attacked when Rio arrived to rescue her. Rio carried Latifa to safety and defeated the wyvern with his bare hands. Alma was amazed and the other wyverns retreated. Sarah explained that wyverns avoid strong enemies. The following day, Latifa apologized and revealed she was from Japan like Rio. They laughed at the coincidence and Latifa promised to wait for him. The elders gifted Rio mithril armor, a wyvern skin coat, supplies, and a space-time cache. Rio promised to return if the village was in danger and said his goodbyes, especially to Latifa, and flew off. 2 weeks after arriving in Yagumo, Rio still hadn't found any clues about his parents. He asked Rory and Seo to take him to their leader, Elder Yuba. After mentioning his parents' names, Rio learned that Yuba was his grandmother, Zen's mother. Yuba revealed that his parents had graves in the village set up shortly after they had left. She offered him a place to stay, and he accepted. Rio helped prepare breakfast the following day, impressing Seo and Shin with his cooking skills. Yuba asked Shin to take Rio hunting, and Shin reluctantly agreed. Rio excelled with his arrows while Shin struggled. Afterward, Rio built a bath for himself since there was no village bath. Rory and Seo were curious and Rio explained it to them. Rory teased Seo about her feelings for him. When Shin and his friends discovered what Rio had done, they rudely assumed he was trying to impress the villagers. Rory and Seo defended Rio against Shin, forcing him to back off. Shin, while helping with village chores, attracted the village girls. Yuba asked Rio to guard their rice shipment to the capital and he agreed. A fight broke out when Shin confronted Gon, the chief's son, about entering the bath. Gon asked to stay with Rory and Shin tried to defend her but was overpowered. Yuba stepped in, housing Gon in a spare house. Gon tried to kick Rio but tripped unnoticed. Shin asked Yuba to shelter Seo and she agreed to do so. That evening, Rio gave Seo a protective amulet. The next day, Rio helped Yuba welcome the tax collector. After dinner, Rio trained outside the bath. Rory and Seo asked about his martial arts and he explained that it was to protect a girl he had loved. Later, Gon snuck into their house to assault Rory, but Rio quickly responded. Gon attacked, knocking Rio out, but Rio healed himself and took Gon into custody, worried about his merging psyche. The following day, Hayat informed everyone that Gon would be arrested. Rio apologized for his actions, but Rory and Seo were grateful for his quick help. They had breakfast and Hayat prepared to leave with Gon as a prisoner, carrying a letter to Gon's father, Kuki. With Yuba's letter in hand, Hayat, Alphonse with Rio and a few villagers headed to the capital of Karasuki. Meanwhile, Dala ensured the other men were settled in an inn and asked Rio and Shin to accompany him to the constabulary. Shin thought Gon had gotten off too easily, as he would have killed him. Afterward, Dala treated them to kamuden, a noodle-based dish which Rio enjoyed, delighting Dala and Shin. The next day, Shin insisted Seo join Rio on a shopping trip. Rio took her out for kamuden and Seo picked a pink flower hair ornament from a street merchant. Before they left, the merchant advised Seo to win Rio's heart, sensing his future popularity. While walking, Rio saved a young noblewoman, Komomo, from a disturbance. Her attendant thanked Rio, but soldiers arrived, prompting Rio to grab Seo's hand and flee. Goki told his son that Komomo had been nearly kidnapped but was saved by a mysterious stranger. He handed over the letter from Yuba, which shocked Goki. Rio and Seo returned home where the men noticed Seo's hair ornament. Before Rio could enter, Goki and his wife asked to speak with him. Goki introduced himself as an old acquaintance of Rio's parents. He explained that Zen had been a skilled soldier years ago during the Kingdom of Karasuki's war. After a duel with Goki, Zen became a personal bodyguard to the royal family. His parents grew close, but during peace talks, an ambassador attempted to abduct I.A.M., leading to Zen's intervention. The ambassador called for Zen's execution, but Zen and I.A.M. eloped instead. Seeing Rio confirm his parentage, Goki invites him to the castle to meet the king and queen. Rio met his grandparents, King Homura and Queen Shizuku, the next day. Rio told Homura and Shizuku about his parents. His father had died young and Lucius, a family friend, had killed his mother. After being abandoned, Rio rescued Princess Flora and attended a prestigious academy where he had a good experience. When he asked about Lucius, Rio vowed to seek revenge. Homura warned him of the pain revenge brings, but Rio remained determined. Homura then asked Rio to duel Goki, one of the region's strongest warriors. Rio won the duel with his unpredictable fighting style. Homura had planned for Rio to train under Goki, but Rio's skill was clear. Rio returned to the village, visited his parents' graves, and resolved to move forward. Rio shared his royal heritage with Rue, who initially spoke to him formally. He asked her to return to her usual cheeky self and told Rory and Yuba that he planned to return home the following year, though he would make a stop beforehand. He also mentioned a girl who treated him like an older brother back home. The following day, Rio visited the sewing house where the other girls grew jealous after seeing their first-name familiarity. Days passed quickly and Rio enjoyed living in the village, now his third home. While overseeing RIZZ's rice planting, Gala joked about her being a good wife. Rio checked her progress and told her he planned to leave after the harvest festival, which caused C to hide her tears. Shin, misunderstanding, thought that Rio had caused Seo's tears and confronted him. She cleared things up and Shin apologized. The situation was resolved, but some tension remained. Meanwhile, she trained secretly in spiritual arts and combat. The harvest festival arrived and a shirtless man challenged anyone to beat him in a ring, prompting some men to push Dala into the fight. Rio helped Ruri and Komomo with the kamen while speaking with Coco. Seo asked Rio to talk privately and confessed her love for him. However, Rio apologized, explaining that he could not return her feelings. Seo asked if she could join him on his journey, having trained hard not to be a burden. Despite her efforts, Rio declined and walked away, apologizing to Shin, who had been hiding nearby. The following day, Rio set out before sunrise. Rory and Yuba bid him farewell, inviting him to return any time. Seo stood nearby, recalling a past conversation about forsaking her village for Rio. She hesitated but affirmed her love for him. She said a bittersweet goodbye and Shin waved in the background, too far away for his face to be seen. Ryo returned to the spirit village where she greeted him eagerly. He shared his journey with the elders, telling them about his time in Yagumo. Latifa was excited to learn about her grandmother and cousin. The elders asked how long he planned to stay and Rio responded that he would wait a few months before moving on, promising to return sooner. He also considered bringing a house using his space-time cache, a plan Dominic thought was double. After 2 or 3 years, Rio returned home feeling like he had finally returned. Latifa had invited him to join her in the bath, which the other girls thought was scandalous, though it wasn't the most shocking thing to happen. The next morning, Rio woke up to find a girl in his bed. At first, he thought he was dreaming, but soon Sarah and the other girls walked in and saw the situation. They demanded an explanation, but Rio had no idea how to explain. Sarah mistakenly thought she was the one at fault for interrupting. The girl woke up and introduced herself as a spirit bound by a contract with Haruto. Rio recognized her as the same spirit who had taught him spirit arts, but had never returned afterward. The girl didn't have a name and asked Rio to give her one. The other girls noticed she called Rio Haruto and communicated with him telepathically, assuring him not to reveal his true identity. Rio asked her to wait for a while before giving her a name. Sarah suggested taking the girl to the elders for answers. The girl used spiritual arts to dress herself and Rio instinctively named her Aishia after spring because she reminded him of the season. They brought Aishia to the elders, arrived sensing a new spirit. However, Aishia had no memory, which was unusual for elevated spirits. When asked about her spiritual abilities, she answered everything. Outside, Rio and Aishia faced off in a duel to gauge her strength. The duel started when Rio threw a rock into the air. Rio fought in close combat, but to his surprise, Aishia mimicked all his moves and attack patterns. Breaking away, Rio used spiritual energy, which Aishia also matched. They exchanged powerful magical attacks, ice shards, fireballs, and tornadoes. As the battle caused significant collateral damage, Dryas intervened and ended the fight early. While Aishia wasn't an avatar, her strength was undeniable. Dryas decided to take her under her wing to teach her about the spirit world, and the elders welcomed her into the village. Aishia quickly adapted, taking lessons and helping with daily tasks. A few weeks later, Dominic showed Rio the house he had built, which could be stored in Rio's space-time cache. With the house complete, Rio planned to visit the elders before leaving again. Sarah pulled Rio aside, asking him to spend more time with Latifa before he left. That evening, Rio realized he had been focusing too much on spiritual training and not enough on his relationship with Latifa. Latifa, determined, entered the bath and insisted on washing Rio's back. They shared personal details. Latifa's real name was Endo and Rio's was Haruto. They realized they had both been in the same accident that had brought them to this world. Rio apologized for not being a better brother and promised to return soon. The following day, Rio prepared to leave the spirit village once more. Ursula gave Rio a teleportation crystal and Seldra, a hair-changing earring for concealment. He asked them to care for Latifa while he was away and she bid him farewell. Rio and Aishia returned to the Straw region, eager to see Celia. In Beltrand, Rio learned of a noble wedding and disguised himself to inquire. He then infiltrated his old college but found Celia's lab empty. A professor revealed that Celia was set to marry Charles at the royal palace. Following a defeat by Proxia, the House of Huguenot had fled and the House of Arbor arranged the marriage to secure power. The wedding was tomorrow and Rio wanted Celia's thoughts on the marriage. Aishia found her in the palace. Celia dined with her father, Roland, and fiancé Charles, who reassured Roland that the marriage would strengthen Beltram. Though Roland disliked it, he agreed that the marriage was necessary. Aishia informed Rio of Celia's location. After 4 years, they reunited, but Rio asked about her feelings about the marriage. Celia claimed that Charles was respectful but hinted at wanting to escape with Rio. She quickly changed her mind, urged him to leave, and gave him 20 seconds to go. Celia cried, conflicted, while Rio remained unsure of her feelings. Aishia promised to help him understand. The next day, RIZZ visited Charles. While talking, Rio sensed a powerful spirit nearby, but it quickly disappeared. Charles had one of his men guide RIZZ to the wedding venue. Meanwhile, Celia sealed herself for the upcoming wedding, repeating that she was just a doll and nothing more. Charles introduced her to his 6 other wives, with Tinas, the first wife, reminding Celia that she would be at the bottom of the hierarchy. Celia quietly accepted her positioned to avoid trouble. Their moment was interrupted by Princess Christina's surprise arrival. Concerned about Celia's pale complexion, Christina apologized for the situation and promised to help bring her smile back. Celia thanked her, expressing hope for a reunion with Princess Flora. Later, Charles and Alfred discussed wedding security, with Charles asserting his control. The ceremony began with a lavish parade and Charles behaved arrogantly. As Celia's carriage neared the palace, Ecchi contacted her through telepathy, urging her to look to the side. Celia spotted Rio in the crowd and moved to tears. She didn't want him to see her in this state. Celia heard a commotion from the security detail as they approached the palace. Rio broke through the barricades in a daring raid, fighting the security detail with surprising speed. Charles, confident in his elite soldiers, believed they could handle him. However, Rio reached the front of the parade, punched Charles in the chest, and took Celia hostage. While the security team scrambled, Rio communicated with Celia telepathically. Charles struggled to break free, but Rio forced him down with a boot. He reassured Celia that it was all an act, promising not to harm anyone except the soldiers he had fought through. He asked her if she wanted the wedding to proceed, offering to stop it if she wished. He vowed not to let history repeat itself. Celia, conflicted, asked if stopping the wedding was the right thing to do. Rio pointed to her sad expression and said that she wouldn't look so troubled if it were the right choice. He promised to take her far away if she agreed. Celia smiled and accepted his offer. Rio then announced he would abduct her in front of Charles, making it seem like a magic trick. Rio effortlessly evaded the security detail and leaped over them. Charles demanded the kidnapper be captured, but RIZZ realized Rio was the boy who had defeated the Minotaur. Impressed, RIZZ tested him with an energy bolt, which Rio easily blocked. As Rio escaped, an aerial unit pursued them. Charles blamed Alfred for the failure. Rio carried Celia to safety, with the Griffin unit close behind. He sped up and landed in a dead-end alley where Ecchi was waiting. He handed Celia over and promised to meet her soon. Rio then drew the Griffin unit's attention, prompting reinforcements. He created a commotion, fighting several royal guards while carefully avoiding killing anyone. Alfred, the king's sword, stepped forward to challenge him. The two were evenly matched, but Alfred noticed Rio wasn't using the edges of his blade. Feeling underestimated, Alfred unleashed his noble phantasm Blood Arthur, firing a devastating laser. When the smoke cleared, Rio was gone. Alfred ordered a sweep of the area to confirm his defeat. Meanwhile, the Beltram nobility was thrown into chaos. Celia waited anxiously for Rio. When he arrived, battered and torn, she rushed to embrace him, and they felt a glimmer of hope. However, Ecchi sensed that something was wrong. Beams of light shot from the ground, and she urged Rio to save them. In a nearby field, 3 Japanese students struggled to understand where they were when bandits kidnapped them. Rio arrived, hearing Japanese voices, and swiftly defeated the bandits. The students were shocked to hear him speak Japanese. One of them, Masudo, mentioned that another companion had been captured. Rio hurried to the final cart where he found Miharu, the love of his life. Haruto's first loves, Ayase, Miharu, Ecchi, and Masato, were caught in time-space magic and summoned to another world after witnessing 6 pillars of light. Ecchi sensed trouble and asked Rio to save them. Meanwhile, Miharu and the others were captured by slave traders. Rio arrived and showed Miharu's smartphone, questioning the traders, but the chief denied knowing anything. Just as Rio was about to leave, he heard a call for help in Japanese and realized the traders were lying. The chief ordered his men to eliminate Rio, but Rio defeated them individually, annihilating the traders. Terrified by Rio's power, the chief surrendered and ordered his men to release the captives. Rio then met Ecchi and Masato, and upon releasing the 3rd captive, he was shocked to find that it was Miharu. When Rio introduced himself as Haruto, Miharu was surprised. Rio also realized that Ecchi was Haruto's half-sister and Masato was his stepbrother. Rio saved Miharu and the others, and Celia and Ecchi flew toward the group, stunning them. Celia checked on Rio and then realized they were what Ecchi had mentioned. Rio introduced them to Celia, and since they couldn't communicate, Ecchi temporarily linked Miharu and Celia's languages with a kiss on their foreheads. Afterward, Rio took them to his living space. While bathing, Miharu learned that Ecchi was his spirit, leaving Ecchi stunned. Rio explained to Masato that their world was like a fantasy world. After the bath, Celia surprised Rio by wearing a tracksuit Ecchi had lent her. Rio concluded that they had been caught in a summoning magic phenomenon. Ecchi asked about Haruto's past life, but Rio remained silent. Celia then suggested that the 6 pillars of light might be connected to the legend of the 6 wise gods. Rio added that 6 sacred stones would glow 1,000 years after the divine demon war and pillars of light would appear. Rio explained that 6 heroes would replace the 6 wise gods to lead humanity, but he dismissed the idea that Miharu and the others were those heroes. Miharu also asked if her friends Satsuki and Takahisa had been brought to this world, but Rio couldn't confirm. As they discussed the situation, Ecchi started feeling sleepy and told Haruto they should go to bed. She hugged him to replenish her magic, which caused Celia to react strongly. Celia insisted it was wrong, but Ecchi explained that she always slept with Rio. As Ecchi tried to drag Rio away, Celia argued that he hadn't bathed yet. Rio clarified that Ecchi, being a spirit, needed mana from him. Celia, still uncomfortable, insisted that Ecchi couldn't sleep with Rio, worrying it might set a bad example for Masato. Ecchi decided to sleep with Miharu, who had a lot of mana. Rio agreed to guide them to to their rooms. Meanwhile, the Beltrum Kingdom summoned a hero named Hiroki Sakata. Ryo wondered what Miharu would have thought if he had revealed his memories of Haruto Amikawa, but he decided to leave Haruto's past behind and live as Ryo. He also vowed to get revenge on Lucius. Later, Celia visited Ryo and asked about his past life. Ryo revealed that he had memories from a past life and lived in the same world as Miharu and the others. Celia realized that Ryo had once been Haruto and had been 20 years old in his past life, which explains why Haruto had seemed mature when they first met. However, Ryo reassured her that he was Ryo now, not Haruto. Celia sent her father a letter informing him that she was safe. RIZZ informed Charles that Celia's abduction should have been a big disaster for him. Charles, however, believed that Ryo was dead after a strike from Alfred. He was only concerned about not being able to track Celia yet. Charles told RIZZ they had sealed off the capital and sent a search party. RIZZ was impressed by how well Ryo and Ecchi had covered their tracks. RIZZ noted that Liselot and the Rika Guild were significant threats that must be dealt with quickly. Meanwhile, in the Beltrum Kingdom, Sakata Hiroki, once summoned as a hero, became arrogant and mighty, typical of his scumbag personality. Huguenot, another scumbag, tried to win the hero's favor. Later, Ryo decided to go shopping with Celia and Miharu. Ecchi carried Celia and Ryo carried Miharu. Before entering the city, Ryo advised Miharu to call Celia Cecilia in public and change his hair color. He helped the others do the same to avoid recognition. They visited the Red Guild to buy necessary items, but Ryo learned little from asking the townsfolk about recent events. Meanwhile, Liselot heard that an unknown individual had defeated Charles' men and that Celia had been abducted. While unhappy about Celia's abduction, she was pleased to hear about Charles' downfall. Upon hearing about the new hero, Liselot suggested summoning a hero to investigate Miharu and the others' summoning. Ryo headed to the village of spirits. Upon arrival, Latifa rushed to hug and greet Ryo, followed by Orphea and the others. Ryo informed Sarah that he needed to speak with the village elders, so she quickly notified them. After meeting with the elders, Ryo explained the incident with the 6 pillars of light. He believed the pillars had been created using space-time magic to summon heroes from another world. When asked why he thought they were heroes, Ryo revealed that he had taken 2 girls and 1 boy from another world, but didn't believe they were heroes, as they hadn't been found near the pillars. However, he suspected that 2 others summoned with them might be heroes. One elder asked how Ryo had communicated with them, and Ryo admitted that in his previous life, he had lived in the same world as them. He assured them that he would discuss his past life later. Ryo requested shelter from Miharu, Celia, and the others, explaining that Celia was his teacher, rescued from a forced political marriage on her wedding day. He wanted to keep them in the village while he worked on a way to send Miharu and the others back. The elders agreed to shelter them. Afterward, Ryo talked with Latifa, apologizing for revealing his past to the elders without her permission. Latifa wondered if she should also reveal her past to the elders. Ryo told Latifa that one of the 3 people he had taken in was his first love from his past life as Haruto, and that Ecchi was his sister. He hadn't shared his past with them yet. Latifa asked if he planned to reveal his past to Miharu and the others, and Ryo said he might someday, but not yet. The following day, Ryo prepared to leave the village. While cooking, Ecchi worried about her brother and Satsuki. Miharu reassured her, and then Ecchi asked why Miharu was comfortable around Ryo despite usually being anxious around men. Miharu thought Ryo was kind and wondered if it was because he shared Haruto's name. This angered Ecchi due to her complicated relationship with her brother. Meanwhile, RIZZ ordered a revenant to capture anyone with large amounts of magic, unaware that Ecchi and the others were in the forest. As Ecchi wondered if Miharu still loved Haruto, the Revenants charged at them. Ecchi saved them, Celia joined, and Ryo intercepted one. He faced the Dark Revenant while Ecchi handled the others. After eliminating them, Ryo wondered if the Dark One had been trying to communicate. Meanwhile, RIZZ realized that one group of Revenants had returned and suspected they had been eliminated. He noted that defeating a group of Revenants wasn't an easy task. The King of Galark had planned to meet with Liselot and invited the hero of Beltrum Kingdom to a ceremony. When Liselot learned that the hero was Sakata Hiroki and Galar Kingdom's hero was Sumeraji Satsuki, she realized they might be people she had once known. After some time, she encountered Sumeraji. Disguised as Latifa, Satsuki is prepared to meet Ryo's first love, his sister and his teacher. Ryo and the group arrived at the village where Latifa and the others welcomed Celia and her party. Ecchi and Misato were surprised to see Beastman for the first time as Orphea, and the others bowed before Ecchi. Miharu and the others began to realize that Ecchi might hold significant importance. Ryo explained that the people of the spirit world revered high-level spirits as divine beings. Celia introduced herself to Ryo's sister, Latifa, but was suddenly compelled to touch her adorable tail. Naturally, Latifa allowed it. Then, unexpectedly, Latifa started speaking in Japanese. Miharu and the others were still trying to process whether Latifa had spoken Japanese. Latifa then clarified that, like Ryo, she remembered her previous life. She shared that she had already discussed her past with Orphea and the others and offered to become their language instructor. Latifa then told Ryo that she understood what it was like to be in a new world for the first time, and Ryo agreed. When Miharu introduced herself, Latifa realized that Miharu had been the one Haruto had feelings for. As Miharu and her group entered the village, they noticed that the demi-humans seemed frightened of them. However, a village child approached Miharu and complimented her school uniform, saying it was unusual but quite charming. In return, Miharu told the child that their ears were cute. Soon after, the villagers began to warm up to Miharu and her group. Later, they hosted a feast in their honor. The village elders also met Miharu and her companions, and the dryad appeared. Eventually, Latifa escorted Miharu and the others to their rooms. Masato expressed his desire to become stronger and protect Aki and Minaru. The following morning, Celia, Rio, and Aishia visited Celia's old home to deliver a letter to her father, informing him that she was safe. They entered a secret passage since Celia felt it wasn't the right time to meet her family. After delivering the letter, Celia departed. Meanwhile, Lissalot invited Hiroki Sakata to their gathering. Upon meeting her, Sakata was so captivated by her that he momentarily lost his ability to speak. Nevertheless, he agreed to attend the party. On their journey to Amand, Lissalot and her group encountered a dragon, prompting them to seek shelter elsewhere. While there, Lissalot spotted Duke Huguenot's airship and noticed the troublesome Hiro. Apparently, Huguenot had business in Galark, so Hiroki decided to tag along. In truth, Hiroki had already begun following Lissalot, much to her annoyance. Meanwhile, as Rio explored, he heard about an upcoming Galark party introducing newly summoned heroes. He immediately asked for their names, but the shopkeeper was unaware. So Rio and his group decided to head to Galark to meet the heroes. Lissalot told Hiroki that she planned to travel to Amand by land since flying would be dangerous due to the dragon. Hiroki objected, insisting Lissalot shouldn't go alone with just her maids. They tried to intervene. Hiroki insisted on accompanying them. Lissalot tried to refuse politely, but Hiroki refused to listen. At this point, his behavior became increasingly overbearing and unsettling as he seemed infatuated with Lissalot. Arrogantly, he showed off his hero item and declared he would protect them, though it was clear he might not be as helpful as he thought. Lissalot, Princess Flora, and Hiroki headed to Amand, but a swarm of monsters soon ambushed them. Lissalot's maids immediately sprang into action. Meanwhile, Aria was shocked to see nearly 300 monsters surrounding them. It was clear that RIZZ was behind this attack. As Aria bravely fought the monsters and showcased her skills, RIZZ couldn't help but acknowledge her strength. Hiroki, meanwhile, continued to ask Lissalot about the situation, even as Lissalot comforted Flora by holding her hand. Trying to act heroically, Hiroki promised to protect Rona with his poor-quality weapon. But when a monster attacked their carriage, Hiroki became furious and stepped outside, eager to show off. However, upon seeing the monsters firsthand, Hiroki quickly realized his limitations. Meanwhile, RIZZ targeted Lissalot and Princess Flora, summoning powerful minotaurs to attack them. One minotaur cornered Hiroki and his group, sending Hiroki into a panic. Aria tried to help but was blocked by Lissalot's other monsters. Just as one minotaur was about to strike Princess Flora, Lissalot managed to save her, only for the minotaur to make another attack. At the last moment, Rio arrived and easily defeated the minotaur, rescuing them all. This heroism reminded Flora of when a boy had once saved her. One of the maids asked Rio who he was, but Rio decided to take care of the remaining minotaurs. He showcased a portion of his strength, leaving everyone in awe. It went without saying that he effortlessly defeated the rest of the minotaurs. Rio spotted Flora and immediately recognized her as the girl he had once saved. Flora wondered if Rio was the same person and introduced herself, thanking him for saving them. Rio responded by presenting himself as Haruto. Lissalot introduced Rio to Flora and the scumbag who asked if they had met. Rio clarified that they hadn't, mentioning that he was a wandering swordsman. Huguenot was surprised that a swordsman of such skill wasn't affiliated with any nation. Claude, who had served him at the Rika Guild, recognized him as a regular customer. Lissalot thanked him again, and the wanted hero arrogantly introduced himself as a hero, claiming to be the real deal. Rio politely listened as Hiroki condescendingly implied that Haruto was a decent swordsman, though he knew little about swordsmanship. As Lissalot praised Haruto, Hiroki decided to return to the carriage. Flora kept staring at Haruto, but said nothing before leaving. Rio wondered if she had recognized him. Rio then mentioned that he had coincidentally met Lissalot, a powerful noble. Taking the opportunity, Rio offered to fix their carriage. On the journey to Amand, Celia spotted her old friend Aria surrounded by monsters, so Rio stepped in to help. Lissalot commented on Rio's remarkable skills, although Rio attributed them to his ancient sword. Lissalot's maids were already taken with Rio. After fixing the carriage, Aria and Rio found a minotaur sword blocking the road. The wanted heroes tried to move it, and Hiroki, using his magical energy, pushed the sword, giving Rio a smug look as if to say, "I'm not completely useless." Rio continued his journey to Amand with Lissalot and the others. Huguenot told Haruto not to be formal since he had saved them, and Lissalot agreed, saying she would thank him formally upon their arrival. However, Hiroki insisted that someone as remarkable as Lissalot shouldn't bow to others so easily. The self-proclaimed hero arrogantly permitted Haruto to travel with them. Meanwhile, Latifa taught Miharu and the others the Stan language, and they quickly became fluent. Orphea helped them practice spirit arts, and Ecchi noticed Miharu was skilled at controlling them, while she struggled, which made her feel sad. While wandering, Ecchi recalled how she used to play with Haruto and Miharu before Haruto left after their parents' divorce. Later, Orphea and the others talked about meeting Rio and Latifa. Orphea remembered catching Rio crying in his sleep, calling out someone named Mekin. This piqued Miharu and Ecchi's curiosity, as Haruto had used to call Miharu Mekin in their past. Ecchi told Latifa about how her brother had betrayed her in their mother's remarriage, expressing her desire to help Masato and Takahisa. Meanwhile, the emperor of the Proxia Empire Midol had gotten an unexpected visit from Lucius. As they talked, RIZZ entered and asked for Lucius' help. RIZZ mentioned someone troublesome interfering with their plans, referring to Rio, and said the Minotaur posed no threat. Lucius asked what to do, and RIZZ instructed him to abduct Princess Flora. Meanwhile, Princess Flora couldn't sleep, her thoughts consumed by Rio. Rio and Lislot arrived, and Aria showed Rio to his lodging. Rio informed Celia and Aisha about their stay in Amanda. Celia worried about their identities being revealed, but Rio reassured her. Though Celia suggested leaving soon, Rio wanted to build a good relationship with Lislot to meet the hero he had been searching for. Meanwhile, Huguenot praised Aria, prompting Lislot to question Hiroki's abilities. Huguenot believed Hiroki had potential but lacked experience. Lislot suspected that Huguenot planned to use him as a symbol of power. Huguenot expressed surprise at Rio's skill in defeating the Minotaurs, saying they would have died without his help. He told Lislot he wanted to build a relationship with Haruto, but secretly planned to use him for power. Elsewhere, Stuart and Alphonse, accompanied by two girls, boasted about their noble status at a hotel. Alphonse was upset about losing the spotlight when Rio had saved them earlier. He requested a room with a garden view, but the receptionist told him it was already booked. He demanded that the current occupants, Rio's group, be moved. Stuart recognized Rio, and Rio were called them as the bullies from the academy. Alphonse demanded a room switch, and things escalated when he pressured Celia and Aisha into joining him for dinner. Rio declined politely, and Alphonse insulted him, calling him a commoner. As Haruto tries to leave, Alphonse stops him, but Rio damages Alphonse's ego, causing him to attack. Rio easily knocked both him and Stuart out. Lislot worried about this incident's impact on her relationship with Haruto. Meanwhile, Duke Huguenot decided to apologize personally and confronted Stuart and Alphonse. He disowned Stuart for his failure and criticized Alphonse as well. Huguenot mocked Alphonse for lacking talent, asking if he could defeat 3 Minotaurs as Haruto had. Alphonse suggested using an enchanted sword, but Huguenot reminded him that Haruto had defeated 2 alone, further humiliating them. Huguenot allowed Alphonse to clear his name by joining a forest investigation party. If he failed, he would return to Redania. Alphonse agreed, but was shocked when Huguenot demanded that they apologize to Haruto first. Later, Lislot visited Haruto, met Celia and Aisha, and informed him that Huguenot wanted to apologize and had invited him to lunch. At lunch, Huguenot apologized, calling Alphonse and Stuart scumbags, and forcing them to apologize, further damaging their egos. During the meal, Hiroki praised Lislot's food, and Rio wondered if she was also a reincarnated person due to her familiarity with Earth's culture. Flora asked about Rio's journey, and he shared that he had been traveling since he was 11, after his parents died, in search of someone connected to them. Huguenot offered Rio permanent residence in the kingdom of Beltrum, but he preferred continuing his journey. Lislot and Huguenot tried to convince Rio to settle in their kingdoms. Meanwhile, the low-budget hero arrogantly claimed that Haruto would never have the status or strength of a true hero, which piqued Rio's curiosity. Rio then asked about Galaric's hero, Subaraji Setsuki, and realized that Setsuki was the person he had been searching for. It was also revealed that the hero of Beltrum, Sakura, and possibly Sendo, the hero of the kingdom, would attend the party. Meanwhile, Alphonse cursed his fate, and Lucius arrived. As Lucius confronted Alphonse and the knights, the leader questioned his identity, but Lucius suggested they must have been Princess Flora's bodyguards. RIZZ joined Lucius and asked if he knew any of the knights and whether using them as test subjects was fine. Lucius nonchalantly said he didn't care. Angry, Alphonse ordered the knights to arrest Lucius, but some preferred to talk. Lucius drew his sword, and Alphonse eagerly wanted to face the red-headed man. Before they could move, Lucius effortlessly took out half of the knights. Alphonse saw this as an opportunity to prove himself and challenged Lucius, who invited them to come at him with full force. Alphonse tried to catch Lucius off guard, but Lucius mocked him, saying he would save him for last. After toying with the knights, Lucius decided to eliminate them individually. Alphonse realized Lucius' power likely came from a cursed sword, and they were losing. When Lucius defeated almost all the knights, Alphonse tried to run, but Lucius caught him easily and began bullying him. Cornered, Alphonse offered money to be let go, but Lucius knocked him out without hesitation. Miharu daydreamed about Haruto and wondered if his use of Mechen had been a coincidence, revealing her feelings for him. Meanwhile, Flora expressed a desire to thank Haruto, which led Rio to suspect that she might have noticed something about him. Lissalot arranged a tea party for Flora and Haruto to meet again, which Haruto agreed to. Duke Huguenot saw him off. Later, Hiroki commented on Flora's behavior, noticing she often looked at Haruto. He suggested she was thinking about how to thank him, but Hiroki dismissed it while she boosted his ego. After waking up, Alphonse was surrounded by Lucius, RIZZ, and revenants. He watched in horror as one knight was transformed, and RIZZ explained that Alphonse would become a perfect revenant. Lucius agreed, and they used a unique stone to complete Alphonse's transformation. Meanwhile, Duke Huguenot, concerned over the missing search party, reflected on Alphonse's incompetence and considered using powerful pawns like him. RIZZ completed the transformation of the knights into revenants and told Lucius that their plan would begin at sunrise. Alphonse, now a powerful revenant, retained his arrogance and rage. RIZZ encouraged him to do his best, giving him meat and drink. Flora wondered if Haruto was Rio. She regretted not being able to clear up the misunderstanding and felt the need to apologize, but feared it wasn't enough. Duke Huguenot discussed the situation with Lissalot. They were unsure if the search party was dead and planned to send a new party at sunrise. Lissalot suggested sending Aria with them and noted that stronger monsters or demons could exist in the forest. Despite Huguenot's suggestion to ask Haruto for help, Lissalot refused, saying Haruto wasn't an adventurer. She kept adventurers on standby in case of an attack. Meanwhile, Ecchi alerted Rio about the nearby demon presence as RIZZ's revenants marched toward West Amand. The gatekeepers sounded the emergency siren. As RIZZ's demon army attacked Amand, Celia headed to Rio's room and told him to focus on what must be done. Rio surveyed the situation at the West Gate, where Amand's forces held off the monsters. Ecchi then sensed more monsters at the East Gate. At the East Gate, Lissalot, Chloe, and the knights were struggling against the demons. Rio decided to help and effortlessly took down several demons with a single strike, leaving everyone in awe. Lissalot learned about the situation at the East Gate and ordered reinforcements, sending her maid with others. She kept Duke Huguenot's knights at the manor. As Rio continued to handle the demons, Lissalot realized it was Haruto, and Chloe confirmed that he was the one who had saved Lissalot and was an exceptional knight. Meanwhile, RIZZ and Lucius discussed their next move, with RIZZ waiting for the Minotaur's signal. RIZZ also sensed Ecchi's presence. As Rio continued fighting, the knights were impressed by his strength, and Rio began to feel that something was wrong. He realized the Minotaurs and humanoid demons might have another goal. Rio continued fighting the demons at the East Gate and contacted Ecchi to check if anything strange was happening in the city. She didn't sense anything unusual, so Rio continued taking down demons. Nathalie arrived to back up Rio and Chloe. After seeing Rio fight, both were impressed by his strength. Nathalie introduced herself and thanked Rio for his help. Rio mentioned that he wanted to meet with his companions at the hotel before leaving, then decided to take down the Minotaur. He eliminated it with a single strike, leaving everyone in awe. He then took out several demons in one go. At the West Gate, Aria and the knights fought demons, puzzled as to why the Minotaurs and humanoid demons weren't attacking. After Rio left, RIZZ and Lucius signaled with Alphonse, now a revenant, eager for revenge. The demons and Minotaur began entering the city. Rhea regrouped with Celia and Ecchi, then evacuated them, defeating revenants. He also saved Chloe's family, and the townspeople followed suit. Meanwhile, Hiroki questioned the frequency of demon attacks, which Stuart mocked. At the northern castle, Rio was told to prioritize evacuation to the manor. Meanwhile, Alphonse and Lucius located Princess Flora's room. Alphonse, eager for revenge, defeated the guards and headed to abduct Flora, causing panic among the Duke and others. Stuart and the knights prepared to fight, but Alphonse ordered the revenants to attack. When one approached Hiroki, Alphonse stepped in and knocked him out with a single blow, taunting him before warning Duke Huguenot that he was following. Alphonse then easily knocked out Huguenot, mocking him for being weak. While Alphonse tormented Huguenot, Stuart and the knights tried to help, but Alphonse threw Huguenot at Stuart, enjoying the chaos. Meanwhile, Rona advised Flora to run, buying time for her escape. However, Rona accidentally led Flora straight into Lucius' hands. Flora demanded to be let go, but Lucius introduced himself as human scum and taunted her. He warned that help would arrive too late due to the strengthened revenants. As Lucius began tormenting Flora, RIZZ intervened, reminding Lucius that they needed to avoid confrontation with the humanoid spirit who had entered the manor. RIZZ, seemingly more human than Lucius, found his actions repulsive. Lucius warned Flora not to move too much or she risked losing her legs before exiting the manor. Rio and his group arrived and Ecchi sensed demons inside. Rio alerted Lissalot, but she reassured him that Flora's room should be safe, though she sent guards just in case. Meanwhile, Rona tried and failed to hold off Alphonse. After defeating the remaining knights, Alphonse turned his attention to Rona. Hiroki woke up, awakened his powers, and effortlessly took down several revenants, shocking Alphonse. Hiroki engaged Alphonse, saving Rona with a powerful move, but Alphonse, realizing the threat, decided to flee. RIZZ knocked Rio out before summoning more revenants to keep him and the others busy. Rio defeated the revenants while protecting civilians. During the fight, he hears Flora scream and spots Lucius carrying her. Lucius doesn't recognize Rio due to his new hair color, but when he declares he is taking the princess, Rio recognizes him. Despite trying to pursue it, Rio was surrounded by revenants. Asia and Celia urged Rio to save Princess Flora, and Celia encouraged Rio to follow his feelings. Rio promised to rescue Flora and set off to catch Lucius. Asia instructed Celia to deploy a barrier to protect Liselot, and the civilians and Celia surprised Liselot by deploying multiple advanced barriers. Asia easily took down several revenants, grabbed Chloe's spear, and fled. Liselot realized Asia's strength and questioned Rio and his companions' true identities. Alphonse, recognizing Asia, charged at her, but Asia dodged his attacks, and after a quick exchange, stabbed and decapitated him effortlessly. Meanwhile, Rio, concluding that the voice belonged to Lucius, tracked him through the forest. Upon spotting Lucius, Rio attacked, but Lucius, not recognizing him due to Rio's new appearance, was surprised. Rio finally confronted Lucius, filled with anger and rage. At the start of the episode, Minaru dreams of Rio's past, witnessing Lucius killing Rio's mother before Haruto avenges her and fades away. The reason for Minaru's vision remained unclear. Flora was thrilled to see Haruto, while Lucius was excited to face a strong opponent, unaware that it would backfire. Rio demanded that Lucius show his face, threatening to end him if he harmed Flora. Knowing Rio was the humanoid spirit's contractor but unaware of his identity, Lucius questioned Rio's intentions. Rio declared that his goal was to eliminate Lucius, prompting an attack. However, Rio's special robe neutralized Lucius's surprise strike. As they fought, Lucius taunted Rio, naming Flora's importance to him. Rio defended while waiting for an opening, eventually catching Lucius with a series of attacks. Lucius admitted Rio's strength, but struggled to recall their past connection. He tried to threaten Flora by forcing Rio to reveal his identity, but Rio saw through the bluff. Lucius proposed a deal. He would release Flora if Rio revealed his identity. Rio agreed, but Lucius's decision to let Flora go was a mistake. It freed Rio to fight without restraint. Rio recalled events from over a decade ago in the Beltram Kingdom, hinting that Lucius had targeted a specific family. Lucius recognized Rio, admitting his mistake was letting him live. He mocked Rio, revealing that his mother had been a princess and repeating her dying words. Flora began connecting the dots, while Lucius noted Rio's changed hair color. Lucius arrogantly vowed to play with Rio, but Rio sliced off his arm, shocking him. The fight became one-sided, with Lucius helplessly defending. Rio overwhelmed him, kicking him into a tree and relentlessly attacking. Lucius questioned if Rio was a monster, but Rio's dominance was clear. Using spirit arts, Rio continued the brutal assault, leaving Lucius desperate and nearly unconscious. The long-awaited beatdown was well-deserved. It was an incredibly satisfying moment as Rio moved to end Lucius. Despite Lucius's attempt to reattach his arm, Rio burned it to ashes. When Lucius pleaded for arrest, Rio dismissed him and charged forward. Though Lucius evaded, Rio crushed his left eye, leaving him in agony. This episode was arguably the most gratifying in Spirit Chronicles. As Rio prepared to finish Lucius, the latter tried to block the strike, forcing Rio to increase his force. Realizing his impending death, Lucius targeted Flora with a dagger, but Rio saved her. Just as Rio launched his final blow, RIZZ intervened, saving Lucius. It was infuriating. RIZZ's timing couldn't have been worse. Right as Rio was about to achieve his revenge, RIZZ stepped in, calling Lucius valuable and refusing to let Rio kill him. Rio called Lucius a coward, mocking him about waiting another 10 years to cut off his other arm. Lucius demanded that RIZZ release him, but RIZZ bluntly stated that he'd die if let go. Despite Rio's efforts to stop them, RIZZ escaped, using a powerful trump card against Rio. Asia warned Rio of the incoming attack, which was so massive that it was visible from Liselot's manor. Whether Lucius was a pawn or part of a larger plan, RIZZ's interference was deeply annoying, leaving viewers eagerly awaiting Rio's eventual revenge. 12. As RIZZ struck Rio with a powerful attack, Celia grew worried, but Asia reassured her that Rio was fine. Things began to calm down. Although Rio emerged unharmed, he was frustrated that Lucius had escaped. Flora then addressed him as Master Rio, saying she had always wanted to thank and apologize. Rio asked why, and Flora explained that he had been falsely accused and saved her. While Rio didn't hate Flora, he felt she could have prevented his wrongful accusation if she hadn't been so timid. He told her there was no need for thanks or apologies and gently pushed her away, adding that if she thought he owed her anything, she should forget the name Rio. Despite their contradictions, Flora seemed to know that Haruto was Rio, though Rio wouldn't admit it. He decided to take Flora back to the manor. Meanwhile, Liselot thanked Celia and Asia for their help, and they checked on Huguenot. Celia healed him as Ronan explained what happened. Ronan provided a detailed account, and Liselot shared news from outside in exchange. When Ronan asked about Flora, Liselot explained that she had been abducted. Ronan realized realized she had unwittingly handed Flora over to the kidnapper, but Lizelot and Duke Huguenot reassured her that it hadn't been her fault. Lizelot added that Haruto had gone after the kidnapper. Soon when Rio returned with Flora, she welcomed them back, and Rio explained that while he had brought Flora back safely, the culprit had escaped. When she invited Flora inside, she refused to let go of Rio, claiming her legs had given out. She didn't want to miss the rare chance to be carried by her prince. On their way to the manor, Lizelot asked Rio about the man who had kidnapped Flora. Rio revealed that the kidnapper, Lucius, was someone he held a grudge against. After taking Flora to her room, Huguenot thanked Rio for saving her. Rio tried to leave, but Lizelot offered them a room to stay in, and he eventually agreed. As they left, Celia noticed Flora staring at them. Meanwhile, Lucius, severely wounded, was kept alive by RIZZ using one of his crystals. Lucius claimed he could have won if he still had his left arm, but RIZZ told him he stood no chance against Rio in his current state, and warned him not to confront Rio while he was so weak. Rio then told Celia that Flora had discovered his true identity and that he had asked her to forget about Rio. Celia realized that was why Flora had been acting strangely earlier. Knowing Flora's personality, Celia believed she wouldn't reveal Rio's secret. Rio said they would head back to the spirit village once finished, and added that Miharu's friend Satsuki was the hero summoned to the Gullart Kingdom. Celia then asked about Rio's past with Lucius. Rio revealed that he was seeking revenge for his mother, whom Lucius had killed in front of him, and he believed Lucius had also killed his father. Celia apologized to Rio for bringing up painful memories, but Rio reassured her and expressed his deep hatred for Lucius, saying he could never forgive him. He asked Celia to keep this information secret, as only a few knew. Later, Lizelot held a meeting where Duke Huguenot shared that Lucius had once been a low-class noble in Beltrum and a candidate for the king's sword, but his family had fallen apart before he could achieve it. Lizelot expressed concern about RIZZ, and Huguenot revealed that RIZZ was an ambassador of the Proxia Empire, though he was unsure if they were the same person. Huguenot decided to investigate further. After the meeting, Rio prepared to leave, but Lizelot insisted on rewarding him. Pressed by both Huguenot and Lizelot, Rio agrees to attend the hero's party and meet Satsuki. Later, Rio returned to the spirit village, where Miharu was overjoyed to see him safe. Rio told her he had found her friend Satsuki, and when Ecchi asked about her brother, Rio said he hadn't found any information yet. Rio invited Miharu and the others to the Gullart Kingdom for the hero party.